the concepts of intellectual property rights and protection, teaching you how to protect what you create. And now, here's your host, Sarah Jane Sugitan.
Hi everyone, after hearing from the Senate, we are now going to talk about intellectual property. Ooh, and now I have here this morning, of course, my co-host Larry Bruhard. Hey Larry, good morning. Welcome back
Sarah,
from
how
Tokyo.
you doing? Yeah, I just got back last night, and I'm just wild to be back here.
You know, Larry's really doing his homework. He was asking me Sunday night, was it? You sent me an email. What are we talking about on Piracy Watch? And I didn't know that you were abroad.
You didn't know?
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my
sorry.
God, this
I
guy
was
is
supposed to
really
tell you.
doing
Yeah,
doing his homework even abroad. So thank you very much for being such a good co-host and reminding me that we need to talk about something.
Okay, yeah, and we have actually one of the great things to talk about is names, right?
Yes,
brand
names,
and we
trademarks,
have the master
and
with
social
us
media, and the
today,
master.
the master
yeah.
of brand names.
A
and
very
super
good
brands,
introduction.
right here to my left, and I'll let you introduce him.
Oh yes, the president and chief executive officer of the only global brand arbiter in the world, in the Philippines.
That's
You are in
right.
88 countries, Mr. Harry Tambuatco. Good morning, Mr. Harry.
Good morning, everybody.
Yes, and previous to this show, you were hearing a live feed from the Senate about the Bureau of Corrections. But did you know that the Senate was supposed to hear a very important bill exempting the blind, the visually impaired persons from copyright infringement last Monday? Unfortunately, we got shelved into tomorrow due to some important matters such as this one and also the ARM elections. But hopefully this bill will go through with the Senate. The House has already approved its version exempting the visually impaired persons from any copyright infringement in case we multiply or we reproduce works translated into Braille for non-profit use and reproduction. But anyway, back to our topic. Today we're going to talk about, how do you choose your name in an increasingly competitive not only marketing world but also virtual world. Okay, and it's quite tough considering that you have to, of course, according to a study, only 40% of businesses, and I'm not sure businesses where, use social media. And I think that is an underestimation or maybe a lack of awareness.
Well, I think that that same article said that as low as that is, a couple of years ago it was 19%. So,
it's a huge improvement.
It's come a long ways from then, and maybe looking back in history, but for those of us who have not studied it but lived it, learning,
but lived it, yeah.
Sitting down and trying to come up with a name for a new company. Of course, when you're getting into business, you don't really know what you're doing, but you want to have a cool name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And
something
at
that's
the
easy to
time-
remember.
At the time that I started ICCS was 1975. And so we sat down with some friends and stuff, and I said, oh man, I'm an intercultural communication service. I thought that was really great, and that became ICCS. Well,
That's the name of your company today.
but I didn't think at the time, and when it was registered, at that time, foreigners couldn't register companies. You couldn't even be on the rolls of the companies. And so my old tennis friends, they all put their
names
their,
into
their
it.
honko or their seals, their chops on it. And we registered the company as Intercultural Communications Service. Now that is a handful when you start writing that out in katakana. it's like, you start at
Sounds
9 in the
like
morning, you finish about 10:30.
Writing down the whole thing.
It was not a good idea.
It was a long name.
So we all called it ICCS, of course. Well, then come around 11 or 12 years later, the company had grown from a one person. We were up to about 50 or 60 people at the time. And so the consultant that I hired said, look at, you got to get out of this alphabet soup. Now that was a time where people said, okay, we're not going to have alphabet soup anymore, ICCS or any of these other things. So we ran a contest in the company about who would come up with the best name for the company. We were going to change it. Well, it turns out all of those people that had been with the company had grown with it as it had come along, did not want to change ICCS. They didn't care about Intercultural Communication Service, but they didn't want ICCS, so we ended up keeping it. And so, but we did change the formal name to ICCS, which is a lot easier to write than the other. And this actually was not so much out of step with two very famous companies in the United States, IBM and 3M.
Same thing.
How many people know what 3M stands for?
No.
I don't. at the moment.
Minnesota Mining and Minerals, I think that's what it stands for.
Interesting.
And they never change it because the staff have identified
they made it
it?
3M. They changed it from the beginning of that to 3M, rather than Minnesota Mining and Minerals, because it's too much of a mouthful, isn't it? IBM, what does that mean?
International Business Machines.
Right. Good. That's what it started out. If you were an IBM employee, though, you sometimes refer to it as IBM moved, because they
IBM
moved around all the time. But yeah, everybody knows it as IBM, don't they? You know.
But when you put the letters together and you just use the letters as the trademark, like IBM, International Business Machines, or Intercultural Communications Inc. In your case, that is just to simplify the actual trading name. But really, what goes into a name? A name, well, first you build the brand. You build the deliverables.
That's it.
And people seem to forget what it's all about. When you create a name or when you're out in search for a name, the ideal factor is always definitive of the service or the deliverable.
Absolutely.
Ideally.
It's an
it should be,
embodiment.
yes, an embodiment of the deliverable of the brand promise. And the brand is what you're going to try and build. In your case, the perfect example there was 12 years later from one staff to 60.
We changed what ICCS meant to Integrated Communications and Consulting Services, because that's the business we were doing.
Yeah, see,
we were
it's
not
definitive.
doing intercultural communication.
Yes.
We were doing integrated communication. We were doing all sorts
That's
of
right.
communications.
Integrated
Right.
communications, when you were doing that, it defines exactly the service and deliverable. Now, what goes into the name actually is the deliverable, the promise, and what you deliver, or what you have as the brand that you create.
Right.
And that's where everything starts changing. Because a name is just a name. I mean, let's take out, for example, the biggest names in the century, the Fab Four, the Beatles. If you think about it, a beetle is just, it's an insect.
But they spelled it differently.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can change the spelling.
Yeah.
No, but like
It was
like-
misspelled.
yeah, and the bands in the Mercy Beat, the Crickets,
Right, right, crickets.
Zombies, and all these bands, the Rolling Stones,
By the way, just some useless information nobody needs.
yeah.
Do you know how the Crickets got their name?
How the Crickets did.
They recorded in their.
They heard a cricket in the
there was
room.
a cricket
Okay.
was playing in one of the songs.
all
One
right.
of the songs was there. No, they
Interesting.
recorded in the
very good
garage,
story.
and they had a
But-
problem with the cricket.
That's what I mean. It's not really the name itself. It is more of the brand promise.
Yes.
And the brand that you create, the integrity, the goodwill.
The attitude
The
behind
attitude,
it.
yes. Because everyone seems to forget that it's like when they say Aling Nene store, they're meaning Nene, who's probably the owner, the chef, or the cook, who slaves all day to cook the food, and everybody knows that corner is Aling Nene's, or something like that. It's definitive to the service that it delivers. Ideally.
Exactly. That's that kind of marketing, that you're doing, where the name tells the marketer, tells exactly what you're doing.
But there are also brand names that go out of their way not to even describe. I mean, for example, Apple. You wouldn't think it's a computer. I mean, really. It does not make sense. Macintosh, what does that mean? It sounds like an English
kind of
or an
apple.
Irish. Yeah.
That came
Yeah, it
later
actually
because
sounds like
Yeah, it's a kind of apple, but
It's a kind of apple,
yeah, but Macintosh is an Irish family name.
But they had a failure before that called Lisa, and I never did understand where he picked up Lisa.
Well, there you go.
Lisa
nobody
didn't
picked
make
it up.
Yeah.
And
I
Lisa
guess
didn't
because it
make
wasn't
it.
kind
That
of
brand
apple,
Or
I guess.
even the letter Sony, the big names.
You know where that came from?
What does Sony
The guys
stand
that
for?
were Morita and the guys that were doing it
Yeah,
in those
yeah.
days, they called themselves the Sunny Boys.
Oh,
They were
that's
the
why,
young
the
guys
Sunny
coming
Boys.
out of World
Sunny
War
as
II.
in sun, the
Interesting.
sun.
Well,
Literally
Sunny
the
or
sun.
Up and
young,
coming,
or young or
yeah.
Sunny or
Oh,
whatever.
right.
And they were the
That's
Sunny
right.
Boys, and so it became Sony, And an interesting thing about Sony and Honda both were bigger names in
But Honda's a
America
family name.
before they were here. Yeah, Honda's
A Honda's a family name,
But
so
they
it's
became bigger names
the integrity
in the US
is in the
before they
brand
became
name.
here, right.
The family name is the one that produces
yes,
or
yes.
provides
Right.
that. But brand names, it is not really the title itself, it's what you make out of it.
And what you think of it, even a Toyota was a family name.
Yeah, Toyota.
But now, if you say Toyota, people don't think of a family name. They see a car,
Car.
don't they?
Yes, yes.
actually
That's what
see
they
a car.
associate.
Because the brand has delivered over the years, and now you
Right.
identify the brand towards a specific product and or service.
Back in the 80s, we were part of the move from changing the name in the United States from Datsun to Nissan. They
Yes.
after the war, because Nissan was one of the big companies that was producing all of
The war machines.
and
Nice.
things. And so when they started marketing in the U.S., they went Datsun was one of the cars that they were making. That was
All
the
right.
type of
Yeah, I
car
remember
they
the
were making.
Datsuns. We used to
And
have
the
it here.
Datsun Fairlady Z.
Yes,
they
yeah,
were
they were
called.
good cars.
Well, yeah.
That's
So-
right. Datsun became Nissan.
Yeah,
I just
Datsun,
I
they
forgot
changed,
all about that.
They
Yeah.
killed Datsun and made it.
Yes,
but
yes.
that was not easy. That was not
No,
easy
no.
because people in the United States were used to Datsun.
Yeah.
Well, look at the
were
computing
using-
world, HTML. Hey, this is all Lotus. You know,
Yeah.
and they went through
The word star.
but they went through a ritual, a ceremony burying Lotus, when in reality Lotus exists still today.
No, it does. It's under different. I forget who's doing Lotus now.
Yeah, but it's basically still there. You
Yeah.
can never really bury
No.
that. But it is really what it delivers, is what we're trying to say over the years. The goodwill, the integrity, the deliverables, as long as they're all intact, and it does it. You know what's interesting, though, is the best way to kill a brand is actually to advertise it if the brand does not deliver. Take, for example, these airlines that advertise nonstop in the broadsheets. The cheapest fares and everything, 196 pesos. But what you don't know is when you get to the airport, you're going to end up paying more. And, when
go
that
into-
happens and you frustrate the consumer, the best way, these guys are doing their very best to kill their brand name. Because when you don't deliver, my gosh, the worst thing you can do is advertise.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the other ways that you can kill a brand overnight or anything today that we didn't have that problem before is a mistweeted
Yes.
tweet.
There you
Or-
go.
There you
social
go, yeah,
media.
tweet. Because you can never take it back.
In other words, we talk about, we talk about only 30-some% of people have their own websites. Is what
Of
the deal was.
businesses
Yeah,
having
that-
their
that
own
have their own
website.
website of businesses, and that's growing, of course. But look at how many people are now doing this tweeting, and they don't really understand the ramifications of when you make a mistake. I mean, we have our politician in the U.S. today and unfortunately his name is Wiener, the poor fella.
Yeah,
But,
That's really his name. We're
we
not
have our own
cursing or
version in
anything.
Malacanang, part of the communications team. They were talking about wines that they didn't like in another country.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that just
yeah.
happened?
Oh,
yeah,
and
right.
the
Oh, yeah,
mistweets.
recently,
The
yeah.
mistweet, yeah.
That's right, I said the mistweets. And you can ruin a brand. We can spend 36 years building a good brand and not even come up with a bad product.
That's right.
But just end up because somebody said something silly or stupid on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn.
Yeah, and you
all
can
of
never
a
take
sudden
it
that goes out.
They
to a million
underestimate.
people,
They underestimate the broadcast
And
of
that
Twitter.
affects your brand. Okay, more on branding and how to choose your name after this traffic and weather update from Charlie of traffic.com.
And now, traffic and weather together, powered by Traffic.com on DZRJ, 810 AM, Voice of the Philippines.
Good morning, and time now for another look at the roads. So now let's see what's happening along the stretch of Coastal Road on the northbound lane. If you're heading out to Manila, it's now piling up as you get to Longos. After that, it's clear to Marina. Moving on to what's happening along Andrews Avenue, those coming from Domestic Road will be forming a line going out to Nicoles. Moving on finally to Rojas Boulevard in Pasay City. Going north is also going to be a problem as you get to Libertad, and then from Vita Cruz it's also tight to Kirin Avenue. Expect more delays from UN Avenue to TM Calao. As for the weather conditions today, it's already 33 degrees Celsius in Lawag, Ilocos Norte with partly cloudy skies and winds coming from the north at 15 kilometers per hour. Expect rain showers in the afternoon, but skies will clear up in the evening. I'm Charlie, and that's traffic and weather together on DZRJ 810 AM, the voice of the Philippines.
Traffic and weather together every hour from Traffic.com and DZRJ, 810 AM, Voice of the Philippines. Real-time news all the time.
This is VOA News, brought to you live from VOA through DZRJ in Manila.
Libyan rebels say they've seized the western mountain town of Yafran from sources or forces loyal to leader Muammar Gaddafi after NATO airstrikes last week destroyed key government military targets, enabling opposition forces to advance. Ethnic Berber fighters who joined the anti-government rebellion retook Yafran, about 100 kilometers southwest of Tripoli, Monday. Pro-Gaddafi forces had attacked the western mountain region after local Berbers rose up against government troops at the beginning of the uprising. Media reports say government forces have left the town and that rebel flags could be seen along with defaced images of Mr. Gaddafi. 5 U.S. soldiers and at least 13 Iraqis were killed Monday in separate attacks in Iraq, the deadliest day for American troops in Iraq in more than 2 years, and comes months before U.S. troops are scheduled to withdraw. American authorities did not release details of the U.S. deaths, but Iraqi officials told Western media the incident happened in Baghdad when rockets hit a U.S. installation. Iraqi officials also said a suicide attacker detonated a bomb-laden car in the city of Tikrit, killing at least 13 Iraqis and wounding more than 15 others. The former head of the International Monetary Fund, Dominic Strauss-Kahn, has pleaded guilty to charges he sexually assaulted a maid in a New York City hotel last month. VOA correspondent Peter Fedinsky reports dozens of unionized hotel workers jeered Strauss-Kahn as he entered and left the courthouse.
Dominic Strauss-Kahn's court appearance lasted just 5 minutes. He pleaded not guilty to charges of sexual assault, and the judge reminded the defendant he must appear for trial or risk losing his multi-million-dollar bail. Strauss-Kahn's attorney, Benjamin Brofman, told reporters afterwards that any suggestion of forced sex on the part of his client is simply not credible. Strauss-Kahn is charged with 7 counts of sexual assault. They include 2 felony charges. If convicted, he could be sentenced to 25 years in prison. His next court appearance has been set for July 18th. Peter Fedinsky, VOA News, New York.
New York Democratic Representative Anthony Weiner has admitted he sent a lewd photograph to a female college student using his Twitter account after previously denying he had done so. Weiner apologized for lying but said he will not resign. This is VOA News.
You've been listening to VOA News, brought to you live from VOA through DZRJ in Manila.
This is RJAM Field Reports.
The Police Highway Patrol Group or 308 HPG based in Bulacan recovered one carnap vehicle. Police Senior Superintendent Jack Haban, the Highway Patrol Group Region 3, Police Director in Region 3, identify the victim, Engelbert Figueroa, and his wife, Josephine, brought to 308 Police Highway Patrol Group in Barangay Mazon, City of Malolos. So for complaint report of one Yamaha Mio with the plate number 50810, Papa Oscar color blue, carnap last year, December 9, 2010. Yesterday, Motor Group 308 proceed to Barangay Atipagtusok, Bulacan, and together Mr. Figueroa, and this recover the motorcycle display at the Internet Coffee Shop located this place. According to Ernesto de la Cruz, friends of Mr. Figueroa, certain Trobel de Rosario has already sold this motorcycle. Follow report from province of Bulacan, News live report of DZRJM, the voice of the Philippines.
This is an RJAM Extra.
How to prevent cancer by avoiding carcinogens. You can reduce your risk for cancer by avoiding carcinogens. Here are some ways. You will need non-styrene food packaging and organic foods. Step 1. Avoid foam food packaging which contains styrene that can be transferred to food inside. Animal studies have shown a link to cancer. Styrene was found in the urine samples of 87% of people tested in a Center for Disease Control and Prevention study. Step 2. Avoid taking your clothes to dry cleaners that use tetrachloroethylene as a cleaning compound. The agent has been found to cause liver cancer and leukemia in rats. Alternative dry cleaning compounds include silicone and hydrocarbon-based solvents. Step 3. Limit your exposure to titanium dioxide, which is found in cosmetics, paints, paper, and plastics. Animal studies have confirmed the compound's carcinogenicity. The jury is still out on whether titanium dioxide nanoparticles found in cosmetics can be absorbed by the skin, and if they are absorbed, what their effects would be. Step 4. Avoid diesel exhaust. These fumes have been linked to cancer in animal studies. Since diesel fumes are practically everywhere, your best bet for avoiding them is probably to move to an unpopulated tropical island. Step 5. Reduce your exposure to aromatic hydrocarbons by limiting your consumption of smoked, barbecued, or burnt foods. Step 6. Consider eating more organic foods. Organic foods contain lower concentrations of problematic food additives. Now you can enjoy a long, healthy life. Did you know? Approximately 100 new food and color additive petitions are submitted to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration annually. Additives cannot be approved if they are found to cause cancer in humans or animals.
Here's your latest headline news update on DZRJ 810 AM, the voice of the Philippines.
President Aquino has signed into law an act reforming the compensation system of government-owned and controlled corporations to, according to him, remove excessive perks and allowances and limiting the mandate of GOCC heads and board members to a year. Aquino says the Governance Commission, or GOCC, will serve as an oversight body that will coordinate policies of all state corporations and recommend which can already be abolished and which can be privatized. Malacanang says President Aquino would likely announce the next Department of Transportation Secretary within the week. Presidential spokesman Ricky Carandang stressed it would be best to wait for the president's announcement rather than engage in speculation. Sources earlier say that former Senator Mar Rojas was being considered to replace Transportation Secretary Jose De Jesus. He resigned from his post effective July to go back to the private sector. Sources, though, say that Rojas has declined the offer.
Manong, pa-sounds ka naman dyan, oh! Nax, Manong! Ano yan?
Romeo and Juliet?
Ha?
Romeo and Juliet ng Philippine Ballet Theater from July 7 to 10 sa main theater. Biyaheng CCP to, no?
For tickets, call CCP at 632-1125 or Ticket World at 891-9999.
Oh, CCP! Isa pa! Kasya pa isa!
In cooperation with Petron, Oishi, DOT, Sun Life, Duty Free Philippines, CDO, Alaska, and this station.
We now return to Piracy Watch on DZRJ 810 AM, the voice of the Philippines. Here's your host, Sarah Jane Sugitan.
Hi everyone, welcome back on the Piracy Watch. I'm with Mr. Larry Bruhard and Mr. Harry Tambuatco of Super Brands and GNN and Opinion, you coming up soon.
Maybe, yeah.
Hopefully.
I'm working. I've worked my way through the alphabet, clear up to H now. You know, by the time I get to Z, I'm going to start writing. You know?
Yeah, good. You should. You should. Opinion is a news magazine that comes out weekly, and Harry and I both have a column in it, and soon Larry will have to, if he gets to submit submit his articles online. I mean, on time.
We'll have a regular column on the graphic, Philippine graphic.
Okay. Super Brands, is that?
Yeah, more marketing this time.
Yeah, great. So you should tweet that. The Super Brands have a Twitter. You tweet or Twitter?
I'm not a tweeter.
Yeah, I'm not a tweeter too.
I'm not a tweeter.
But you're definitely online. You're on the web.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
And what else?
I mean,
Facebook?
like Al Gore, I invented it. That was
I like Al Gore.
There you go.
But getting back to what is important, in coming up with a name today. Before we would just come up with a name, and we didn't really worry about so much if somebody else had it somewhere else in the world or whatever they might do.
Had the same
but
name.
Now, because you want to have a website, so you have to have a name that you can fit into your website. If it's too common, somebody else will already have it. And in the early days of the net, people went out and registered. They bought up all of the names that they thought anybody would ever need, so that they could sell them back to them. When they got going.
It's a racket, yeah.
And so, you've got to worry about that. You've got to worry about the sustainability and make it easy to remember. And still, again, with that guerrilla marketing approach, that the name says what you do. Which
definitive.
is another. It's definitive, defines what you do. And that's not easy. That is not an easy thing to do. So, Mr. Brand and name expert, I think let's lay it on Harry here and say, look at Harry.
Let's make Harry work.
No. It's the way we look at branding is basically, like I keep saying, it's all deliverables. Any name can be anything. For example, let's go to the most basics. People. We give identities to people when we rear children, when we have kids. We have that one opportunity to call your son and or your daughter a title. You do the same thing when you pick up a dog or a cat or a mouse or a snake or a lion as your pet. Whatever it is, it's your fancy.
Your cat.
No, but we tend to put names. Yeah, some people even give titles to their cars when they become very close to it.
I always had names for my cars.
See? Yeah, your
They're not
cars.
ones I can repeat on the air, but
Well, there you go.
I always
Yes.
name my cars. I name my guitars. My guitars. All
We
have names.
identify
Or
with
your
the
gadgets?
titles that we create. I remember when I was in high school, I had a motorcycle, and the movie The Graduate was very close to my mind and my heart. I really enjoyed the movie. I participated in that movie, and I remember the character. His name was Benjamin Braddock.
Yeah.
So when the decals were coming out then, when you could buy it in National Bookstore, where you get the decal and you get that printer, I used to put, the name, the title, Benjamin Braddock. I identified with it. It was not too much the title, but what the title or the name delivered to me. Yes. So that put me in the mood. So the delivery was there.
Sure.
So really, the title, ideally, you hit two birds with one stone when you have a definitive title, but does not necessarily follow. Not necessarily follow.
No, yeah, I think so. And a name, and again, I used to tell people, look at when we would sit down and we're coming up for a name for our subsidiary in the United States. I said it really doesn't matter as long as we do. It's easy to say. And one of the things that we worry about if we're working internationally is the fewer vowels that you have in your name, the better off you are, because then it can't be mispronounced as something ugly in another language.
There you go.
My customer had computer systems called things that you didn't want to say out loud.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, that helps when you do a little bit of research.
There was one was really funny. In fact, we went through and changed a whole lot of them because there was one utility, and they used the company's first letter of the company, which was F, and it was called futility.
Oh, okay.
And so it probably
F
wasn't a very good
utility.
utility. It wasn't exactly what you
yeah.
want. And so what we try to do is, what I would always recommend is you stay away from vowels if you're going to have
Choose a brand.
if you're going to have alphabet soup or whatever, because make it so it's not pronounceable. And that way then you don't get in trouble, But I was wrong.
But nowadays, the role of intellectual property, which is nice, other than protection, should you put it through the mill, so to speak, upon the registration mill, it will advise you, yes. Thanks to intellectual property, when you register it, at least it will tell you on the spot, excuse me, you can't register that, it's a generic title, or they'll give you whatever assessment they will make. So that sort of narrows it down. And unlike before, we can just create it, we really couldn't care less. And besides, the names you couldn't protect them.
No.
Nowadays, when you create it and you source your name and you've identified it, the first thing you do is you register it.
And this is a good point to run
Yes.
that ad again. Register here because it costs you 1,000
Yeah.
pesos. And it's a great, as you said, an intermediate.
Well, it costs you a little more, but upon initial registration, it's 1,000 pesos. Upon
And then-
publication, assuming you're already
Allowed.
allowed registry and you're given authority to use that brand name, then you pay an additional 2K. But 3K, my gosh,
Well, it's
identifies protection that no one can now copy it.
And you're doing just a one-level search, right? There's not a big search, but it's a first step, and it buys you time and
Unfortunately, in the Philippines, this is the sad part. Businessmen, entrepreneurs, technocrats, if you must, don't understand the concept or what we call registration and intellectual property. For all of you out there listening in your cars, in your houses, your brand name that you think you own just because you have a license with the Department of Trade and Industry, or you're a corporation and you're registered and you're paying your taxes and you have your mayor's permits and your business permits, that name that you're using is not yours. You are not protected. Not until you register with intellectual property. And a lot of people, it's sad, especially restaurants, no? People, nowadays, when you invest in small eateries, okay. But when you do like a full-blown sit-down restaurants, you invest something like 2 to 5, 10 million pesos easily. Especially if you're in high-end locations, high-profile locations where you have a lot of walking traffic, and you put your signboard up there, and you think you own this name, and you put it in your calling cards and everything. All another person has to do is look at your name, look at your goodwill, and all the attraction you're creating, and put one across you. And then he opens up with the
use your
same name and use your name, and then write you legally and tell you have to close shop and change your take down your name. And you know what? There's nothing you can do.
Here's a question.
There's
for
no
you.
court, there is no law that's going to protect you unless you're registered.
Certainly, nobody would be stupid enough to let this happen. But if we look at it from the standpoint of, say, my name is Larry Bruhard.
Is it?
No,
okay. I'm Larry.
You know, I've always been really happy that my mom named me Larry because that's what everybody calls me, you know. And so
Can you imagine registering the name like in Korea? Everyone's named Park.
Yeah,
or
right,
Kim.
no, yeah. But what I'm saying is, say, for example, could somebody come out and register the Larry Bruhard name for a restaurant or something, and then I would not be able to use my name in a...
if you put a website that says larrybrewer.com and that restaurant is a registered trademark,
they can ask you to take your name down.
They could ask me to change, even though that's my name.
Even though that's your name, your registration. In intellectual property, I think, plays the role in the names of people when it comes to the civil registry and what they call in the Philippines the National Statistics Office, where you get your birth certificate. All your personal documents are tied into your civil registry, or what you call your National Statistics Office birth certificate. That's your only proof. Now, it does not mean you're going to be the only one. In the Philippines, there are millions maybe that are called Juan de la Cruz.
Oh, yeah.
So I can just
Same
imagine.
With businesses.
Yes,
same with
yes.
businesses.
But with your name, that's okay. You just have to go, the only inconvenience is you have to go to the NBI to clear that you're not the same name if that person has committed a record or a police record. You need to clear and satisfy that. But with trade names, when you call trade names trademarks, then you're already in for commerce. And when you're doing commerce, there is goodwill that's generated, and the outcome would be real incomes. Now, it's okay if it's a net loss and you create expenses and you have what you call these credit payments, that you have to make. Then it's okay somebody steals that name, so they absorb the loss, so to speak. But when you're talking income and there's money to be made, and you create goodwill. For example, McDonald's. McDonald's advertises nonstop, or Jollibee. Can you imagine if they didn't register it and I'll put up my own Jollibee and I'll write them and I'll tell them, you have to close down because I own the name Jollibee. And they've spent millions, billions advertising. They lose it all in one blow. It's as simple as that. No need for heavy, high-strung lawyers, whatnot. You have on your hand the registration that IPO will protect. And a lot of people, I'm not sure if it's still ignorance or it's stupidity, but there seems to be a lack of registration with entrepreneurs.
Yeah, again, just to clarify, much as individuals can have the same names, everyone's Christina or Jose in the Philippines, and same with businesses, you can have the same name. If you're a sole proprietor, you're registered with the DTI, Department of Trade and Industry. But if you're a corporation, you register with the Securities and Exchange Commission. But just because every one of you is named the same doesn't mean that your products are protected. What you use in the market, there's no Apple. The Apple is registered as a trademark, but then that is not registered with the any other office other than the trademark U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and all the other patent and trademark offices in many countries worldwide. So if you're already registered with the DTI and the SEC, you still have, and you have a product or a service, you still have to register your trademark, your brand in order to own it. And you don't do that with the DTI or the SEC, although you can inquire, but you do the registration per se with the Intellectual Property Office. More on the Piracy Watch when we return after this short break.
And now, we present our Voice of the Philippines life coach, Mayen Carmona, helping you navigate life with style.
Hello, this is Mayen Carmona, and my topic for today is the effects of junk food on children's behavior. Eating junk food can stimulate an addictive behavior in children. The incidence of addictive eating behaviors occurs when children are free to make their own food choices without any education about nutrition. The brain can react to junk food the same way it does to any addictive drug, such as heroin or cocaine. An addiction to junk food is extremely dangerous because it can cause overeating, leading to overweight and obesity, which poses another long list of problems. Kids who are hyperactive usually have a hard time sitting still and paying attention for relatively short periods of time. It has been proposed that eating sugary foods can increase the incidence of hyperactivity in children. Evidence shows that eating less sugar-containing junk food will stabilize blood sugar levels and prevent sudden bursts of energy. What should children eat? Nutrition plays an important role in the overall health of children and also can be a factor in learning and behavioral problems. Sky Weintraub, naturopathic physician and author of Natural Treatments for ADD and Hyperactivity, cites poor diet, chemical toxins, and food sensitivities and allergies as some of the main causes for changes in child behavior. Weintraub recommends that children have a low-fat diet rich in fresh food and vegetables, a moderate amount of lean protein, complex carbohydrates, and plenty of purified water. She advises eating organic food as much as possible to avoid the antibiotics, hormones, and pesticides often found in food that can cause sensitivity in children. Restricting or eliminating sugar from the diet, as well as refined and processed food, is highly recommended as they contain the highest amount of additives and preservatives. One of the most important things you can do as a parent for your children's health is to teach them about sound nutrition and learning how to make healthy food choices. This is all for now. Mayan Carmona on DZRJ, 8:10 a.m. on your dial, Voice of the Philippines.
Here's your latest provincial news update on DZRJ, 8:10 a.m., the voice of the Philippines.
A farmer and his 6 children were hospitalized last weekend after eating poisonous black mushrooms in Negros Occidental. Janicio Cabual and his children say they had visions of the sun turning green as mushrooms jumping around after eating the poisonous mushrooms on Saturday. They were suspected of falling ill due to the poisoning. He says he harvested the mushrooms with black caps and brownish stems from his farm. At least 32 people were reported injured after a passenger minibus they were riding figured in a road accident in Ilocos Norte. Bacara Town Deputy Police Chief Samson Amistad says initial reports show the incident occurred 8:30 a.m. along the highway in Bani Village. He cited sketchy initial reports indicating that a motorcycle cut in front of the minibus, prompting the bus driver to swerve and avoid hitting the smaller vehicle. And thousands of residents of Taytay in Rizal enlisted to be members of Environmental Task Force to help in the cleanup of the waterways and water lilies, a project of the local government and the Samahang Kababaihan's Bagong Taytay. The task force members will be clearing rivers, creeks, and lakeshore of water lilies that choke water channels.
We now return to Piracy Watch on DZRJ, 8:10 a.m., the voice of the Philippines. Here's your host, Sarah Jane Sugitan.
Welcome back on the Piracy Watch right here on DZRJ 8:10 a.m. We are also available online live stream on www.facebook.com/DZRJ 8:10 a.m. So if you're on Facebook, just search for DZRJ 8:10 a.m. and we're right there. We're live streaming over Facebook. Well, we were talking about branding, of course, and we've come to the very valuable conclusion that all of you business owners and corporations who are not yet registered with the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines have to go out and register your brands as trademarks as soon as possible before someone else does. Because if someone else does, then you really don't have a right. Because under our regime, it's first to file. It's not first to use anymore. So the proof of ownership lies with whoever has the earlier date of registration. And how to do that? Log on to the Intellectual Property website on www.ipopihil.gov.ph. I still have here with me Mr. Larry Bruard and Mr. Harry Tambuatco from Super Brands. Tell us more about before we go. Before we
get into the new, we touched on
Yes.
something just in the last bit, and before we get into the new subject, Apple was an interesting one because the Beatles had the Apple records, and Apple
that's
came
right,
out,
isn't it? The
and there
records
was
for
there was a lawsuit, I think, and do you know
Over who owns
you
who?
being the expert,
that
who
should
won
be
that,
my homework.
and when did it happen?
Well, obviously Apple won it. I mean,
Yeah, no, they
Steve
did, but
Jobs,
it went over like 10 years, or I don't know how
Right.
many years that they fought about it.
Interesting.
The classic
Okay.
example in the Philippines is the restaurant, the Shangri-La and the Shangri-La Mall. That was the classic example here. I gave an example last week when Director Dimagiba from
The DTI.
DTI, I was telling him when Hard Rock Cafe came into the Philippines and before we were registering it, that's when we found out we couldn't register it in patents because somebody else owned it. But the amicable way of settlement in this case, because Hard Rock Cafe is a big name worldwide. Yes. So what we did was we approached the proprietor and just made an arrangement, paid him off, and we were able to get a waiver and we got the title away from him.
So he sold his
He sold away, yes. Yeah. But, this is what happens here in the Philippines and a lot of people still don't realize it. Maybe that's why we're on air. That's why we're pushing it. And not because we want you to register and make IP, make money. No, it's got nothing to do with that. Absolutely nothing. I think it is the responsibility of DTI and SEC, to tell you the truth, to advise their registrants that they are not responsible for protection. They are only there to give you registry
for the name.
For the name, just so you can
christen you.
Yes.
Christen your business.
Yes, so that you can now get a mayor's permit or a business permit. It is really more of their responsibility to advise the entrepreneurs and the businessmen. Now, for those in Metro Manila, in law, there's a saying, there is no such, ignorance is not an excuse. And so for those who have not registered and you fall trapped to these problems and you feel the consequences in the future, I'm sorry to say, but it's really your own stupidity. You gotta know, you have to know that it is a requirement for protection. So, one more time, if you don't understand it still until now and you need to get a lawyer, I think it may be too late to educate you. But if you think you're smart enough and you know you should register for your own goodwill or your own good anyway, then go and register immediately. Maybe you should tell them the address. Because you can register anywhere now, right?
There's another synergistic thing that goes with that as well. The more people we have having their own names registered and are being part of this. The name of this show is Piracy Watch, isn't it?
Yes, there you go.
They will then have a vested interest in not promoting piracy and other things, I think.
Because you will understand now how piracy works.
I saw this work through Japan 30 years ago. We did a lot of
But, interesting that you said that.
It's not done today, and I think that we can reach this point of
that's interesting you brought that up because we now have a very effective mayor in Manila, Fred Lim, who was actually, when we brought it up when we broached to him the meaning of piracy, which he did understand, there were real reasons why they were stepping back, and now he is moving forward. No one's going to push him to the side. Piracy will be lost in Manila soon, and I'm proud to say that at least Mayor Lim, together with the IP office, is working hand in hand, if necessary, to educate, to enforce. Because if you can't understand it and you just want to make money at the expense of others, then to hell with you as well. Then you deserve to have enforcement come on to you.
Education helps enforcement, doesn't it?
Well, that's true.
The more we educate, the
but
better
sometimes the Filipino, I don't know why that culture's been like this in this country. Many already know. I mean, on the roads, the jeepney drivers know the causes of the environment. I mean, when the bus in front of you and the jeep in front of you blows out a lot of smoke because the jeepneys are not air conditioned, they're the ones who first suffer it. But you see, they themselves who drive these machines are the ones that blow out the smoke. I don't call that ignorance anymore. I don't call that an awareness issue. It's called inconsideration. And there is that culture in the country that persists that is really irritating. It's called inconsideration. You see that on the road day after day. It's irritating. And I can't say that guy's ignorant about what he's doing, but it's really a culture. It's a culture issue. Piracy is a culture issue. So the only way to address that is enforcement.
No, yeah, it will always. The jeepney drivers will drive dirty engines until they're not allowed to.
And besides,
that's
what's bad is they run up more fuel. Yeah. They run up. They end up using more fuel. They suffer breaking down the middle of the road. Their engines will not last. You know that because they don't maintain it. Everything is against it, and yet they will continue to do that. And they're driving really dangerous machines. This is the bad part.
No, actually today, well, every day that I drive C5, there's this one spot that they pull people over and do the
emission
billowing
testing.
the emission testing at this one spot coming out of Pasig, going before Calayan, and they're there all the time. I assume that they're finding these people.
What I find really comedic is of all departments, MMDA is the one that introduced no smoking right in public. Gee, why even smoke with all the pollution? You can't even control it, and now you're going to say no smoking? Hello, MMDA. I mean, you're as bad as the potholes on the road. Seriously.
That's funny. That's funny.
That's what's happening. That's the bad part. But imagine no smoking. I mean, really.
Well, see, I'm not a smoker, so I can't.
No, but all the more for you, because you have to breathe all this air, the fumes, the pollution that the cars make, and it happens every day.
No, it's pretty awful. It's
but it goes on. I mean,
it's never corrected.
No, it's never correct, and they're not going to because they don't want to. They just want to be in media and and whatnot. But they
build up themselves.
And you can't say that's ignorance. You can't say they're not aware.
Not when there's deliberate intent.
Do it
day after day after day.
There has to be.
In consideration is what it is.
There has to be an overt decision made to do something about it. And again, I lived through living in Japan during the 60s and looking at the air in Japan today, it went from one of the dirtiest environments in the world to one of the cleanest environments. And it was because they decided to do something about it.
Because they decided
Larry,
to do
the
so.
difference is the culture of discipline in Japan is very, it's there. It's in existence with the people.
They are disciplined people,
Maybe because of the history and the different wars and the hardships, that it's created. You remember China closed its doors for 30 years, 40 years, until it opened up to the rest of the world after Mao Zedong. Right. And maybe during these years, as maybe specific disciplines and were installed. We, the Filipinos, have been very open and lackluster in our past, in our disciplines, and which is why, none whatsoever, because, hey, someone's going to get in front of me and he's going to cut me, I'm going to go down and shoot him. And then when I'm in jail, put me in the worst penitentiary, it's supposed to be Muntinlupa, I'll just go out to Greenbelt and have dinner, fine dine, no problem, and then when they...
It can be done.
Yeah, and then,
has been done.
And then when they catch me and they put me in front of the TV, I'll just tell them, believe me, I mean it. And that's the reason why I'm in jail, because nobody believes me. I'm supposed to have shot another person.
That's
this is it. This is called
that's
the
sad.
comic. Yeah, it's called the comic relief, called Filipino.
It's called OIP, I think.
Yeah, there you go.
But
it's really the inconsideration of the Filipino, and that's what it is. And piracy is it's one of them, because so openly. My gosh. Aren't you embarrassed when you go to Green Hills and 168 and buy these fake counterfeit bags and watches? Worse, to wear it and walk around school knowing that this is fake. I mean...
What does that say about you?
Yeah, exactly. You're a fake person.
You're a fake person, exactly. And
That's
that's why
what it
we...
is.
Yeah,
well, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, of the idea of rather than the point, this goes back to registration and being proud of your own things, you make great stuff here.
Oh yeah, and brand it.
Put your own name on it, and brand it. Brand it. That's what we're here for.
Yes.
We teach you how to put your own name on it, brand it, and make something you can be proud of. You don't have to wear something from the Italians over there.
Yes, I agree. Which is why in super brands, what do we say?
I'm not against. I mean, my grandmother was from there.
No, but in super brands, we always say, do you have what it takes?
Right, absolutely.
And don't be fooled, ladies and gentlemen. If you see this logo all over the country, look at the years. Many of them say 2005, 2004, 2002. In super brands, it's current. It's not only do you have what it takes, do you still have what it takes to be a super brand. But then again, super brands is not for everybody.
No?
And
you gotta be a super brand.
And in the Philippines,
it's stringent,
you have
to be super.
It's a racket. It's called the award-giving bodies. Here they create awards of excellence that come out in multiple colors. They create awards that come out they title it with multiple precious stones. This is all bogus. It's only created here. So don't be fooled. There's only one global brand arbiter. We're in 88 countries worldwide, and proof of this is go to any other country and you will see it. There's only one Super Brands. Other than that, don't be fooled.
And with that, we should turn the show
Yeah.
back over
Bernie?
to
Yeah, thank you very much, Harry
Sarah.
and Larry. And again, for all of you who need to register or want to register your brands, but you are currently in the DTI or in the SEC, please do ask them about Intellectual Property Office or trademark registration. I'm sure they'll be glad to assist you into our office. And for those of you in the provinces, look up www.ipopphil.gov.ph, and it only takes 1,000 pesos to register. If we reject your brand, you won't spend anything anymore beyond that. But again, that's only 1,000 pesos to have trademark protection for 10 years, renewable for another 10 years, and to time immemorial. So again, thank you for joining Piracy Watch right here on DZRJ 810 AM, the voice of the Philippines.
You have been listening to Piracy Watch with attorney Sarah Jane Sugitan. Piracy Watch, an exclusive presentation of DZRJ 810 AM, the voice of the Philippines. On the Raja Broadcasting Network, this is DZRJ 810 AM, the voice of the Philippines.